Okay.
Okay, I'm currently on your Facebook now.
Okay, I
Biden
should
called the
be.
tragedy heartbreaking and is urging Congress again to
very
ban
good.
certain semi-automatic weapons.
The shooter in this situation reportedly had
Reverend, how are you today?
a pistol.
I'm good. How about you?
Good. Did the articles help you at all?
To pass my assault
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
I've actually saw it prior to you sending it.
Good.
Now to
Because Jim
Mexico,
Daly
West
from the
Florida,
tribe is going to be
dozens of
on.
migrants have died in a fire
At
at
7.
immigration detention
So we'll
center
be
in
able to
Ciudad
interact with
Juarez.
him.
That's across from El Paso,
Great.
Texas. Ciudad Juarez.
Facebook sounds great.
Okay, fantastic.
Migrants. There are more protests and strikes this morning across France against that unpopular plan to raise the retirement age to 64. The government warning that radical demonstrators intend to, quote, destroy, injure, and kill. This is AP News. Now to the trial involving Gwyneth Paltrow.
The man suing Gwyneth Paltrow.
Okay, sorry, sweetie, I'm trying to pull just a few more things up. If you don't mind. Okay, you know how that goes.
Ran into her from.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't engage in risky behavior.
Sanderson says everything was going great on the slopes that day.
And then I heard something I've never heard at a ski resort, and that was a blood-curdling scream. Just, I can't do it. It was, and then, boom.
He says the collision broke 4 ribs and caused post-concussion symptoms that changed his personality and strained his family relationships.
Serious smack. Never been hit that hard, and I'm flying. I'm absolutely flying.
Paltrow's lawyers are arguing Sanderson is trying to exploit the actress's wealth and celebrity. I'm Ed Donahue.
And I'm Rita Foley, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki.
You see what's happening up in Philly with their water? I got to get someone on to talk about that.
Per hour, gusting as high as 50.
No, I hadn't seen that story yet.
Tonight,
Oh my gosh. There was a leak, a chemical leak in the Delaware River, of course, which is their Lake
Thursday,
Michigan.
a chance for rain showers here late, increasing
And
53.
they've been told off and on, 11:59, we'll see if the water's still safe. It's safe until then.
It's 30.
Chicago Voice and Data
Today it's
Authority
3
is located
o'clock.
at IBEW
It's just
134
ridiculous.
Electrical contractor located in Chicago, specializing in voltage.
It's just
systems,
ridiculous.
AV,
I wouldn't trust
cameras,
anything.
access
Yeah, and
control,
I'm
and
saying it. I
firewall.
wouldn't trust a
They
thing these people
complete
have to
in-house
say.
capabilities,
Not a
engineer,
thing.
project manage, install, test, and certify
I
these
wouldn't trust a
systems.
thing.
CVADA
They
can
wouldn't
handle
tell me
any
Don't care about
conception to
humanity.
finished
No, they
work.
don't.
Their work is performed
And
by
I was
highly
reading a
trained
story, and I'm going to
industry
find
leaders.
it.
CVADA is a Chicago company. First
8 billion
and
people.
foremost.
Now
Their
they're saying that
purpose
if
is to
it's
ensure that
if
all people have
six
the opportunity
6
to
billion
thrive
people will
in the
make
electrical industry. They do this by
humanity
educating,
safer.
sponsoring, and hiring those from disadvantaged areas. That dedication, diversity is exemplified by their generous sponsorships awarded to
Just-
high school students
these people
enrolling in the
are evil.
IBEW Union Apprenticeship
Beyond.
CVADA is
Oh, my
DBE,
gosh.
MBE, WBE certified.
I'm gonna send the
company
article
that
to
make a
you.
difference. The business decisions that Chicago Voice and Data Authority have make real impact on the lives of our neighbors and in our larger
They're
community.
saying that will
Learn more
decrease
at
poverty. I'm like,
ChicagoVoiceandDataAuthority.com.
here you have Jeff Bezos on track to become a trillionaire.
We call 911.
A billionaire is already $1 million
Last year,
million
over
dollars.
21,000 high priority
Yes, ma'am.
911 calls took more than an hour before a police
Yes,
officer
ma'am.
was dispatched. West and South Side neighborhoods suffered the most. Now Brandon Johnson wants to cut the police department by millions of dollars, making our neighborhoods even less safe. We need a mayor who puts our safety first. and
Okay, this
invests
is
in
it.
us.
I'll send you this article right
Paul
now.
Vallis
Reducing
will make
inequality
sure
could
our
see the
police
world
department
population
is fully
fall to
staffed
6
with
billion.
Community policing in our neighborhoods.
So you gotta
more
have fewer
officers
people
serving
to
our
reduce
neighborhoods,
inequality.
and they know our community. Paul Vallis will enforce the consent decree and hold the police.
I'm
and
talking to
City Hall
everybody
accountable.
today.
Paul
Jewel,
will keep
Shirley,
schools open weekends
Kevin.
all summer
Shirley,
to provide our kids
so,
safe
you know, Shirley,
alternatives
can
to
you
gangs
call
and
in?
violence,
In
and
fact, I'm
invest
going to
in
reach
our
out to State
long-neglected
Senator Vincent
communities
Hughes.
to provide jobs and opportunity.
And I want to see
Paul
what
Vallis
he
will
has
put
to say, because
crime
I
and
wouldn't
safety first.
drink that
Paid for
water
by
from the
Vallis
tap,
Remain.
Shirley.
This is WCPT 820.
I wouldn't do it.
Where facts matter.
And I'm glad that you're not. I
3
wouldn't
minutes.
do it. Thank you. I wouldn't do it. I've just sent you the article, Stephen.
Okay.
I wouldn't even think about it.
You can help me live the life I want.
Help Ravina and other
Well,
blind people.
how's the water going to be different at 9 a.m. and then 12 p.m. and then 3? What are they talking about?
Of the blind. Your donation will help ensure a brighter future for blind children and adults. Just call 855-659-9314. That's 855-659-9314.
It's just evil.
Visit carshelpingtheblind.org. That's carshelpingtheblind.org.
And do you know that some of the deposits at Silicon Valley were $13 billion and the government paid them out? Stephen, Pastor Thurston, did you know that?
No, ma'am.
$13 billion. And we're not hearing anything about how they're going to make things right for people down in Mississippi.
Journey. Get to know us at socialsecurity.gov.
Nashville, and of course that's a story. Nashville's ahead of that. Israel is ahead of that. Everything is ahead of what's happening to these people, many of whom are black down in Mississippi. But they're not all black. It's Mississippi is everybody.
We are there when you marry your sweetheart to help secure your new life together. We are there if the unexpected happens to help you see life from a new perspective. We are there when you start your next chapter to make sure you get off to a great start. And we are there when they don't even have Mississippi on the top 5 in the top 5 stories for CNN today. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. And whole towns were wiped out. And see what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov. I'm like, I wish y'all would explain this to me. Sorry. Are you going to go past Americans? Look, I am all about helping everybody all around the world. But if you don't take care of America first, I don't know what you're talking about.
Sarcoma is cancer. Sarcoma is a cancer of bone and soft tissue more prevalent in children than adults. More than 6,000 people lose their lives.
Y'all need to take care of home. This is ridiculous. But Shirley, I wish you'd call in, because I think that what's happening in Philadelphia is very unsettling.
30 seconds.
Okay, how many seconds, honey?
We have 25 seconds now.
Fantastic. We're out. We're coming in. Yeah. Okay. Pastor Thurston, we're going to get right to it.
Please help us in the
10 seconds.
For sarcoma.
Oh, are you coming on Friday?
Stand by.
I'm still trying to negotiate that.
No, let me know. Just let me know. Because you might have to just come on with me.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, March 28, 2023. Getting just a little bit of feedback, but we're going to work that out. Hey everybody, it's a joy to be with you. We are closing in on election day. It's a week from today. Have you voted? Are you planning to vote? Even if you're not registered to vote, the good news is in the state of Illinois, we have same-day on-site voter registration. So go to the polling place. Even if you are not, especially if you're not registered to vote, get registered there and then cast your vote. Real simple, everybody. Do not let the minority make a majority decision, and that is choosing the people who govern for us. Not rule over us, but govern for us. That's the people's business, and you've got to be involved in that. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars. Shirley, I'm praying for you and our brothers and sisters in Philadelphia in a special way. Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. She said she's still getting bottled water. I would do that too, and I want to hear your story. I'm going to reach out to some of my brothers and sisters in Philadelphia to ask what's going on. We're going to be talking to some people from Mississippi, Pastor Stephen Thurston, tomorrow, because that is not even like one of the top 5 stories. And it ought to be. It ought to be. I mean, whole towns were wiped out. How are they going to be made right? And when you hear how much money has been given to the depositors at Silicon Valley Bank, you will really want to know how will things be made right for these people who were who had whole towns wiped out. It wasn't their fault either. It wasn't their fault. So, everybody, we're going to be talking about this mayoral race today. Got to talk about it. I know you have some thoughts. We're going to be talking with John Nichols about it. We're going to be talking with the tribe about it. They're really, really focusing in on Paul Vallis's school privatization record. And by the way, he will be on with me on Thursday, and then we're going to have Commissioner Brandon Johnson on, and then Mr. Vallis will be on again next week, and hopefully Commissioner Johnson. Look, I respect the fact that people have their preferences, and I'm not going to bring anyone on this show to ambush them or roll over them, but I do want you to have access to their voices and to their points of view and to their platforms, and therefore everyone who runs will be welcome here, and they will be welcomed here. They will be treated with respect. All right, everybody. So let's get right to it. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. In Chicago, 46 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 36 degrees, partly cloudy. March Madness. All right. Well, South Carolina, repeat. Dawn Staley is doing some great stuff down in South Carolina. I just love her. I really do. But I love watching these women really come into their own. As I watch one of my godchildren who is really becoming this basketball star down in Virginia. I'm so proud of this young lady, but they don't get the attention that they deserve. And so let us support women in sports as well. The March Madness Final Four, women, South Carolina, Virginia Tech, LSU, and Iowa. And, of course, with the men, it's Miami, UConn, Florida Atlantic, and San Diego State. Who will be the champs? We will see. In the NBA, 119 Timberwolves. The Kings 115, but the Bulls fell to the Clippers. Clippers 124. The Bulls 112. In the NHL, the Chicago will be playing the Stars tonight, but the Wild were triumphant last night, and we congratulate them. Everybody, what is going on in the news? The Nashville shooting. Praying for the people of Nashville today. Police in Nashville are working to uncover a motive in the mass shooting that killed 6 people. The mass shooter, actually, that killed 6 people at a Christian elementary school on Monday. The shooter, identified as a 28-year-old former student, transgender, was shot and killed by police during the attack, leaving behind drawn-out maps of the campus detailing how this was all going to take place. 3 9-year-old children and 3 adults were killed in the tragedy. We will be following this story as more and more facts come out. Philadelphia officials are set to provide an update on the city's water safety this morning following a recent chemical spill in the Delaware River that left many residents concerned about possible contamination. City officials have said that the water supply is safe to drink and use at least until 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, prompting many people to snag bottled water from quickly emptying grocery store shelves. Let me ask you this, everybody. Call me. Would you drink the water? Surely you need to call me at 773-763-9278. Philadelphia is still beautiful, but do you trust the water? I mean, to wash your hands, to bathe, because water, you use it for everything. Call me at 773-763-9278. Everybody, embattled Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced Monday that he will delay plans to overhaul the country's judiciary amid widespread strikes and protests throughout the country. Netanyahu, who actually was raised in Philadelphia in part, interestingly enough, said he would delay votes on the remaining legislation until after the Knesset's Passover recess in April to, quote, give time for a real chance for a real debate. The country is up in arms about this, everybody. President Joe Biden's student loan debt relief program faces a new threat from Senate Republicans after nearly 40 senators introduced a resolution on Monday to overturn his plan. For those of you who have been following SVB, that particular issue, guess what? Many of the accounts didn't fall under FDIC coverage. But guess what? One account had as much as $13 billion in it. And guess what? The government made them right. They're calling this the billionaire bailout. That's right. In prepared testimony for Senate Banking Committee, hearing slated for Tuesday morning, the chair of the FDIC reveals that the 10 largest deposits at Silicon Valley Bank held a combined $13.3 billion. Did you hear me, Pastor Stephen Thurston? A detail that's likely to intensify criticism of the federal regulators' intervention in the firm's recent collapse. They were made right. They were made right. $13.3 billion from our government, from you. Think about that, everybody. And we're not talking about Mississippi, people who've lost everything, not just their homes, but the places where they work. How are they going to be made right? No one's talking about that. That's not even one of the top 5 stories, sadly, today in corporate media. But we're going to continue to talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Let's get some good news from Pastor Stephen Thurston. Of course, you can see him on Facebook Live and hear him on Facebook Live every Friday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Stephen Thurston, that's with a PH, and get his book Mirror Moments. Mirror Moments. Stephen Thurston, $13.3 billion. Just real quick, before you give me the good news, what do you make of that? They said it was supposed to be 250,000. What?
The selective care and concern that we give to certain people and ignore the real care and concern for people who need it. It's problematic.
Oh, man. And you wonder why people are so upset. Like, are you joking?
Yeah.
Like, do you think I'm crazy? When I hear something like they're calling it the billionaire bailout, and that's what it is. That is what it is, y'all. That's what it is. But you know what? There's still good news. The universe is still good and great because it is in God's hands. Give us some good news.
We've got some good people in this world.
We do.
But for the past 200 years, reciprocity has been the base of human cooperation. The implicit or explicit mantra of humanity has been, you solve my need and I'll solve yours. And as a result, we've learned to settle for transactional forms of relationship and love, Santita. This explains why random acts of kindness towards us can sometimes feel weird for both the giver and the receiver, because something on the inside of us says, I didn't earn it, I didn't deserve it, or now you may even feel indebted to the giver, because we tend to view life and relationships through a transactional lens. Receiving the grace and kindness that's offered to us from others, it can feel...
Dr. Knighton is on.
One of the key issues with transactional relationships is that when the transaction is over, the relationship really has no reason to exist. And this is a conundrum I even face with consulting relationships. If I give too little to the organization, I won't satisfy the customer's needs. But if I give too much and solve their need, I become useless, and it's back to the hunt for the next contract. And whether business or personal, transactional relationships aren't built to last and aren't built to grow. That's the problem. The two biggest threats to these type relationships are change and independence. And the real truth of transactional relationships is that you're actually investing in the other party's stagnation. That's the only way to create the need for the relationship to continue. Well, I still got some good news. And the good news is that we can course correct from transactional to relational relationships. Let me tell you how we can do that. Number one, I want us to eliminate expectations. Why? Because expectations kill depth and add breadth to a relationship. When we keep tabs on what we've done for others and get emotional when they don't do the same for us, we're being transactional. I want us to move to the place where we do things for each other and with each other. The only expectations you should have are for yourself. To be present, to give what you can when you can, and to receive with appreciation if given to. Number two, I want us to be real. It's essential that we focus on building meaningful connections. When people are present and true, you can really feel it. And it creates a natural form of trust that can be used to build those meaningful connections. Number three, shift your focus. Move from how can this relationship benefit me to how can I benefit this relationship. You got to make the sum greater than the parts. And as we lead our lives with the intention to give in our relationships without expecting something in return, we'll experience a happier, less anxious life and more relational versus transactional relationships. I want us to move to the place where we become relational with one another and stop being so transactional.
I love that. I love that. Tit for tat. You do for me, I do for you. Either you love someone and you want to give, it's not a gift, then it's a chit.
That's right. Yeah.
That's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, either you're going to give to someone or later for all that. Yeah, I'm with you. Of course, I know you're not supposed to say that behind a little sermonette, but that's how I feel about it. I mean, because I know some people like that, and I'm like, what is all this? If that is not a gift, and keep that. I don't want this. I really don't. Keep it. Keep it for yourself. Well, give me the receipts and let me pay you. Okay? I'm good with that. I mean, if this is what this is, then great. But you're not going to twist someone's arm into love. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Pastor Stephen Thurston will be staying with us to talk about this mayoral election, of course. He is the retired teaching pastor of Salem Baptist Church, the largest black church in the state of Illinois, and one of the preeminent churches in all of black church. And all of the black church is a church that his family have helmed for nearly 100 years, New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church. He is assisting his father in pastoring that church now. We're so excited about it, but he's had a lot of experience. Not just as a pastor, but really as someone, as a social worker, as someone who really understands people. He studied human behavior and social systems. And so we got to talk about what we're looking at with this mayoral race, the mayoral race. And I'm going to have Paul Vallis on, and then I'm going to have, of course, I'm going to have him, and I'm going to have Brandon Johnson before the week is out. Very, very happy to welcome both gentlemen to the show. So we have got you, Dr. Shanita Knighton, infection preventionist. And you do so much, and I'm so glad that you start your day with us every day. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am, though, a little disturbed. I want Miss Shirley from Philadelphia to call in because the people in Philadelphia are getting... I know your area of expertise is not, water safety. But as someone in the field of health, I just want to know what people should do. Every day, the people of Philadelphia are getting alerts on their mobile phones. They're getting alerts on, I guess online about the safety of the water. It's constantly being updated. We'll know by 3:30 today whether the water's safe enough to drink. I'm like, if you can't answer that definitively for me, then I don't want to drink it. I mean, what should people be doing? I mean, just what would you do, just personally? I don't want you to speak for your organization. I just want you to speak as a wife, as a mother, as a daughter, as a sister. As someone who is part of a family and a community. I mean, what do you do? I mean, because everybody cannot afford to buy water, Dr. Knighton. I mean, most folks, the margins are real tight for people.
It is, and unfortunately, Santita, the thing is, I really don't have all the answers. And
that's a good start. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I just don't, because, being in that situation is challenging. How do you tell somebody, hey, go get resources that potentially they don't have access to? But one thing that I will tell you is this. Sometimes, we may tend to think that we can't do because we are structured or mentally structured to spend, let's say, resources in a certain manner. Mind you, there are certain individuals that just don't have it, right? Yeah. But when it comes to, let's say, basic resources and things that you absolutely would need, it's okay, it's really trying to restructure it and realize, am I taking something such as water for granted? Meaning that, am I able to forego, let's say, potentially a fast food meal or something that is a small luxury item just to make sure that I have that basic necessity? if you're saying like, hey, I don't have any basic necessities and I'm still able to not afford water, there's not really much that I can say besides the fact that, yes, we all will want to think that we could look out and use public resources as a resource to be able to support us. But we realistically know that that's not the case all the time. And we've seen it happen time and time again, even within this past year, as we look at the many issues that we're facing in regards to water and the environment, because there is, let's say, limited or faulty regulation around, let's say, these entities doing their job. And the irony of it is, Santita, which we all know, is that there was a, which was being coined as the Great Resignation. Then now you have it as where people, and this is just as a result of COVID, people don't really want to work no more like they used to work. They found value in quality of life. They found value in time. They don't find value in working a 9 to 5. Like, there's studies and data showing that newer generations are just not interested in like that sort of structured work life. So we have to understand that in healthcare and another industry, that means that it's going to come with the faultiness of being a part of a system at times that does not necessarily protect you, because those protections that would be in place, which comes with longevity and experience, are somehow being overlooked. Corners are being cut, which we greatly know. We're not looking at this as being a ripple effect, unfortunately. Meaning, I've had this conversation before. It is the sanitation workers that's able to keep my trash, off the street, which means that the neighborhood isn't deployable, and meaning that there aren't things, that I have to worry about in regards to, disease, right? When we think about, I can even bring up the Minnesota Twin Bridge. And I remember my husband, when he was in school doing a paper on the ethics around that, and the fact that there had been many complaints that, a pin or something hadn't been updated in the bridge, or the bridge hadn't been updated. And the fact that that was known, that's not something that as people we think about on a regular basis, because we assume that other people are doing their job. So it is unfortunate, because I don't have the answers when something so basic as life, when we talk about food, water, and shelter, is being compromised, and we don't have what it is that we need in order for us to be able to survive.
Absolutely.
So my only recommendation to people in this instance is to get ready, so you don't have to stay ready, and then try to think through what are some other creative ways that you can be able to do things. I'm never going to encourage people, drink rainwater, but we have to really recognize that there are methods and things that have been done in other countries that people have had to do in order to be able to survive. And sometimes our place of privilege tends to get in the way of what it is that we need as survival mode tactics.
Everybody, think about that. Make some sacrifices. Have some water on hand. You should always have water on hand, and you should have flashlights and things like that, because we take a lot for granted in the United States. We take for granted that we're going to have water, we're going to have access to electricity and water, and clean water and things like that, 24/7, 365. Most people around the world do not have that. And we're seeing increasingly that we might not have that either. Back with discussions about the Chicago mayoral race. And clean water is an issue in Chicago, too. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Going to be giving these tickets away. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Want to give a pair of these tickets away? Call me right now at 773 to the Chicago debate of WCPT between Vallis and Johnson. Do you want to be there? You better be. 773-763-9278. Back in a minute. Alex, I'm getting an echo.
Willow Springs is powered by ComEd. See how ComEd is.
Okay, let me see what I can do on mine.
Of course.
.com/clean energy. Hi, this is Joan Esposito. Please join us on Tuesday.
Is that better?
Oh, I would have to hear. Hey. Okay, I don't have that. Okay, great. Thank you, Jewel. Hey, Dr. Nina on social media. How you doing, Dr. Nina? Dr. Shanina, actually, but it's Dr. Nina.
I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, wonderful. We are getting ready for our election here. Heaven help, heaven help, heaven help. Somebody's going to be mayor. And please get out and vote, everybody. Please get out and vote. Please get out and vote. I'm trying to have these candidates make their cases in the final days here on the Santita Jackson Show. So I am going to have Mr. Vallis on, and I'm going to have Commissioner Johnson on. So we will be doing that here. And then, of course, we will have our debate, and I'm hoping that you all will be there. It's going to be wonderful. We had a wonderful time leading up to what was to have been the election, but it turns out it was the precursor to the runoff. Because if you don't get 50% plus one vote in Chicago, we have a runoff. So there's that. Thank you, Jewel. And of course, happy birthday to the great Lou Palmer. Thank you so much for reminding me of that. Oh boy. He and Georgia Palmer, what forces of nature they were. And we need to know more about them. Lost two great giants over the past few days. Ed Gardner, Soft Sheen, who did so much in our community. He and his wife, the beautiful Mrs. Betty Ann, they took their money and they helped to make us better people. They stayed right in the heart of the black community with all of the wealth that they made, and they would support candidates who supported black people and those who were living on the downside of advantage. Their black-on-black love campaigns, I mean, they were just...
Reverend Wilson is on.
Legends. Thank you so much, Alex. And of course, Randall Robinson. I was shocked to find out that he had passed away. No one did more to magnify the importance of the African diaspora. He helped to make it a priority. I mean, we were protesting at the South African Embassy because of his work at Trans-Africa. He headed Trans-Africa. And we just thank God for him. I'm going to have some of our people on over the next few days to talk about Randall Robinson and Ed Gardner, because these are two giants. And if you don't know who they are, you will by the time this show is over, because we need to know them. How you doing, Reverend?
No answer from Chaparral Wells.
Oh, okay. All right.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing
Good
great.
Morning.
Okay, Tracy, why don't you call in? Oh, wow. Now, Tracy said, I hope Brandon Johnson will eke out a victory in the mayoral race, but she is worried because of burned bridges with Mayor Lightfoot and her fans, who she writes, who were vilified on this show and others. I didn't vilify her. I did not vilify Mayor Lightfoot. I didn't. But I know that, and I really
10 seconds.
I like her a lot. But there was something that there were
Stand by.
Retail politics, she didn't really understand how to do that, and that became a problem for her.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Let's talk about this Chicago mayoral race. You can vote through April 4th at 7 p.m. It's the voting season, all 50 wards. You can vote in each one of our wards. You can also vote at the super site downtown. And if you're not registered to vote, we have same-day on-site voter registration. You should get involved, everybody. We should not have these abysmally low participatory rates in our electoral process, because somebody's going to get the job. Don't you think you need to have a say in it? What do you think what are the issues for you in this race, and what do you think about the attacks upon the CTU? What do you think about the amplification of Paul Vallis, his school privatization record, which he says, I didn't really do all of that. We're going to ask him about that when he is on the air on Thursday. Can't wait to have him. And we're going to have Brandon Johnson on, I think, on the following day. And we're going to have Mr. Vallis back on, and then hopefully Commissioner Johnson back on, too, just before Election Day or on Election Day, so that we can hear from these gentlemen. I respect the fact that in my audience, people, some are undecided, and some are in one camp or the other. While I have my preferences, I will not impose them upon you. It's just very quickly, I am someone who is absolutely pro-life from conception until death. I don't agree with what they're doing in Canada and increasingly in the United States, where you are free to kill yourself because it's too expensive for you to live. That's ungodly and sick. And I don't believe that people should be forced. Their back should be up against the wall where they feel that abortion is their only option. Would I have an abortion? No. But then, too, I come up with certain religious precepts that would make it very difficult for me to do. But I'm not going to judge you if that's what you've done. And I'm not going to make my personal motivations public policy. I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to do that with this show with respect to the people who are running. I want you to hear them out, and then make your own decisions. That having been said, let's get right to it. We have Reverend Jeanette Wilson, who's with us, Rainbow Push, but of course she's a pastor at Maple Park United Methodist Church, and then, of course, from New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church. And he's done so much. He's a retired pastor. I can't believe you're already retired, but there you go. From retired pastor of Salem Baptist Church, but when you have worked as hard as you have, you're going to be retired from a whole lot of things way before you're 65, looking like he's 20. Unbelievable. But there we have it. So, let's start with you. Pastor Thurston, let me just start with you. We're going to have the gentleman first, since he's outnumbered. Reverend Jeanette Wilson, what do you see in this race? I mean, and we're watching the commercials. They're becoming more and more, well, let's say hostile, to put it charitably. Where do you see this race going? What are you hearing? What is the chitter-chatter you're hearing as you're preaching, as you're talking to people, as you're reaching people?
Couple of things. The low voter turnout is a major concern in the African American community, especially with millennials and Gen Z. In some reports, within some age demographics, only 2% showed up to the polls. In other demographics, it's like around 27%. So that's a problem, because that's the linchpin if Brandon is going to win. The black vote, and especially the young black vote, getting engaged and taking the pressure off of our seasoned citizens who have done the work, who have fought the fight. It's us young people that really have to step up and do our part. The other element that I'm hearing people talk about, of course, is the violence piece and the education piece. But I'm concerned about the revisionist history that Mr. Vallis continues to paint, because his version of the story isn't lining up with the lived experience of people who have lived and worked in these school districts that he's left behind. So there's this big gap between how he sees things and how people have felt things. And that needs to really be addressed and dealt with. Because, again, we can't go back. If something didn't work before, we can't go back to it and then think that magically it's going to work again. Zero tolerance policies, privatizing schools, eliminating school options for people in neighborhoods, cherry picking kids out, putting them in the charter schools. That's a game. We've seen that play before, and we really can't go back to that level of living here in Chicago.
Yeah, indeed, and the charter schools, their standardized test scores are not higher than those in the public schools. I mean, oftentimes we believe that if the child is in a private school, then that's better. It's not true. It's just not true. The majority of the merit achievement scholars are coming out of public schools. They are. It's not just because of the numbers. I mean, when they make a decision to deliver an equal, high-quality education to students, they do it, and they do it on the neighborhood level. As a child, I watched people go to South Shore High School and Kenwood High School and Lindblom and CVS and come out at the tops of their fields. So what are we talking about? How do you see this race, Reverend Wilson?
I think we have to look at
Ms. Connolly's on.
the office. The ads, the commercials have us focused on safety and policing. However, any mayor that sits in that seat has the power to, right now, appoint the head of the school system. That's a lot of power. That deals with contracts as well as leadership and administrators in the school system. Those people will determine what kind of education children will receive. And for too long, we have segregated education in the city of Chicago. It's the haves and the have-nots. It's the top 10% get the best teachers, the best schools, and then the rest of them just attend school. The neighborhood schools have to have a reinvestment and a reimagining of how it is we expect children to go from K-8 to K-12 to college or career. We have to restore the trades in the schools. So the mayor who sits in the seat at this time before we have the elected school board has the power to determine who sits in administration over the schools, both the city colleges, the K-12 schools. Who heads the city colleges, and what kind of leadership do we expect in the presidents of each of the 7 city colleges? How do they work together? Why do you have to take a bus or get across town if you live on the south side and you're interested in health care support, you have to go to Malcolm X. However, if you're interested in communications, if you're on the west side, you have to come all the way to Kennedy King. There should be some synergy on these campuses so that wherever you live, you can get the career training at the local city college. And then, beyond the city colleges, the mayor controls streets and sanitation. That's a big department in the city of Chicago. Most of the workers and leaders of streets and sand have come from 2 wards historically, and they have been predominantly Irish and Polish. And so now we have an opportunity.
How does that work?
Because that's where the mayor came from. We don't look at the power of the office. We don't look at the garbage, who picks up the garbage. We start calling the alderman. It's the mayor's office who administers streets and sand. If you have snow removal issues, it's the mayor's office. And so that's a powerful position. The mayor also co-appoints the board with the governor of CTA, RTA. All of this transit discussion, that comes out of the mayor's office. Who's going to head CTA? Who's going to be on that board? Who will make some decisions about how transportation works? We know, Santita, if you live on the Gold Coast, you can set your watch by the buses. You live on the Soul Coast, you can just wait. You wait forever. Whether it's west or south, bus comes when it feels like it. There's no schedule. I used to take the Streeterville, going to law school. I could count on getting to school on time because the Streeterville ran on a schedule. Live out at 88th and Normal. I'm standing there. You're looking down. You're looking right. You're looking left. You don't see anything coming.
Oh, wow.
So at any rate, CTA, RTA, that is in the purview and power of the mayor's office. Department of Planning. We never know who's heading the Department of Planning. We did know under
Wait. We don't even know what all of these. See, because you just brought up something, and we have Attorney Aaron Connolly on too. You're bringing up all of these departments, and under these departments, not only do you have employees, you have contracts where people make a lot of money. And I would like each of you to speak to that. About a minute. Reverend, I was about to call you Reverend Thurston, because he's always dead on these economic issues.
Reverend Thurston is my twitch. Reverend Thurston is my leader, so don't mess with him.
I mean, because he was like, where is the money, y'all? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?
That's right.
But you keep pivoting back to contracts, and and I'd like for you, and then Pastor Thurston, and then Aaron Connolly, before she gives us her overview. What about these contracts? I mean, a lot of money is made on these contracts, but it's trying to be able to apply for the contracts is a process that locks most people of color, black folks, absolutely out of the process.
Well, you can't. Go ahead, Thurston.
That bar is set extremely high. The qualifications, what you need from the financial lens. We don't have access to capital, so the government may pay 30-day, 60-day net. We don't have the float to make that happen. And living in Atlanta as well and recognizing what Maynard Jackson did, he made black millionaires. He would not stop as it relates to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport until black people had their fair share. And
that's what Congressman Jackson was doing with this third airport. Yeah. He said, no. We are not going. We're not going to. And if I have to take a hit from the unions, which he did, he said, I'll take the hit because you're not hiring enough black people in these unions. I don't see women moving up in these unions the way they should. I don't see Hispanics getting the fair share. So no. What we're going to do is I'm going to make it fair. How about that? And that's a very real process because Boeing makes most of their money from government contracts, Pastor Thurston.
That's right. It's real money, long money, government contracting, and we're blocked out of that system and that structure. That, for many families, creates a whole lot of generational wealth in Chicago. Can we call WASH? Can we call the names?
You can.
Yeah, Mayor Daley made a lot of families generationally wealthy. The contracts that came through that city.
Yeah, because then their kids got in it, and their children's children got in it. It just keeps on going. Right. It keeps on going. Don't think nepotism isn't real now. It's real.
Well, the question I have for you, Santita, and your audience, how is it you have about 6 prime contractors to get all of the city business? You can name them, Turner, Pepper, and so forth, and yet not one of the top 5 contractors in the city of Chicago are African American. Not one African American developer is in the top 6. We know Elsie Higginbottom, but he's not getting the big contracts from the city of Chicago. At Turner, Pepper, I'm trying to think of all of these contractors that built businesses off of city work in the city of Chicago. When Maynard Jackson went to Atlanta, he made sure that African Americans were in the top 5. And that's what we have to fight for.
And then, remember, they ran him out of town.
Not working.
And hold on.
They ran him.
They ran him out of town. He had to come to Chicago to get work. He was a top lawyer, y'all. Once he was done, these people were so angry with him, he could not get a job. He couldn't get a
nothing
job.
Business but the money. What major black law firm is negotiating these bond deals in the city of Chicago? Not one. And we go to the same law schools and learn the same law. It's not like some different law.
Someone else's ice is colder. Let me bring on Attorney Aaron Connolly. Come on now. Somebody's water is wetter. Attorney Aaron Connolly. We're digging down into the weeds because this is where the rubber meets the road. When you see corporations really pushing certain candidates and pushing certain agendas and shaping the discussion through corporate media, this is why. Because all these contracts, all this stuff comes through. But I want you to tell me your thoughts. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? And I can't not wait to have one of these aldermanic candidates on the show that you've been telling me about, because we're going to talk about this, because I'm going to have to send this to you, Aaron Connolly, and Reverend Jeanette Wilson, Pastor Jeanette Wilson, and Pastor Stephen Thurston. Many of the civil rights lawyers, like a who's who, came out with a very detailed endorsement of Brandon Johnson yesterday. It's incredible, and they're going to come on the show and talk about that tomorrow. But talk to me. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Are people getting more enthusiastic? Everyone's saying that the only way that Brandon Johnson can win is if you have a really excited black electorate. But when I look at likely voters, I'm seeing people all over the place still. So what are you seeing, Attorney Connolly?
I'm
feeling the energy and the momentum. I'm feeling the excitement from a national perspective as well. I think people are really starting to understand what is at stake. People that don't normally pay attention, I think, are recognizing that, oh, I have to vote again. This is kind of important. And these guys sound like their ideas are pretty different, right? And we look at some key voting blocks where there's higher turnout rates, right? So if we look at voters in the white female demographic who tend to range progressive, when we see someone like Paul Vallis taking Republican money and supporting folks that, have been architects of anti-choice movements in the state of Illinois and nationally for many years, that starts to get some attention. I think when we see the fear-mongering and the narratives that are coming out from some of the dark money groups in support of the machine-style candidates and Paul Vallis, I think that's having an effect that they weren't anticipating in some ways. When you're calling a mom and a teacher and someone who's been a public servant and done a good job that people are generally okay with, a criminal and someone who's supporting crime, people tend to not trust your messaging, right? Like, it's crossed a line for some of these races, aldermanically and in the mayoral, where the messaging just now seems untrue, right? And we start to have conversations with voters that are taking this process seriously, and Chicago is too smart for this, right? We've seen these defund signs that aren't attributed to any campaign, and in the past, in the previous midterm elections, pop up around the city of Chicago. We see dirty tricks. We see interruptions of press conferences. We see intimidation tactics following young women who are volunteering for campaigns to try and get them to stop doing their jobs. We've seen all of this in this cycle. And what we hear from voters is excitement to turn out and stepping into a process where maybe they never have before, which is really exciting. And we take a look at, I thought it was very fitting that I was listening to one of our other famous FM Chicago radio stations this week, and they were playing music from 1983 when Harold Washington was reelected. And the things that I hear on the ground from volunteers who have been around way before 1983 is, this feels like that. People are participating in the process that don't normally show up. There's an excitement there, which means higher turnout, which means new voters, and I think we'll see that reflected in some of the numbers this week, hopefully.
I want you all to call me, because we are going to have Paul Vallis and Brandon Johnson at this debate, at the WCPT debate on Friday at 12 noon. You need to be there. And you can be, but I've got to give you some tickets. A pair of tickets, 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. 9278. The tickets are yours if you call in, everybody. Call us. Hey, Abraham down there in Venezuela, sending you so much love today. And Jewel in New York, and Dave Dowling up there in Canada. All of you from all over the world tuning into this show. Everyone, like and share, like and share, like and share. So, okay, if people say, well, let's go back. Let's do a little time travel. What did 1983 feel like? And I will say, I can tell you, Judge Marion Perkins, we're both Deltas. She was my big sister in the sorority. And big sister Marion wanted at that time. I can tell you this, Pastor Wilson, she wanted to know if we had FedExed our absentee ballots back to Chicago. That was the only thing between us and Delta. Was she went down the line because she knew everybody from Chicago. Did you send in, because we have to support, come on now, did you send in your ballot? I mean, it was that kind of excitement. And I was in Washington D.C., but it really was a national campaign, and I'm getting the sense that we're looking at a national campaign now. You've got Bernie Sanders coming in, what I believe will be a big rally on Thursday. You've got Elizabeth Warren weighing in, Reverend Jesse Jackson weighing in, and participating as much as he can in campaigning for Brandon Johnson. I mean, what is, just very quickly, I'm going to find out from each of you, give me about a minute apiece, literally. What is at stake? What is at stake? And coming up, we're going to have the tribe talking about the privatization record of Paul Vallis. They've been doing a lot of in-depth analysis of that. Reverend Jeanette Wilson, 1 minute.
Well, I think what we have is the contracts, which is a lot of money, jobs in the city, and the survival and reinvention of the city of Chicago. We have to put our children to work. We have to reimagine how we use mental health. Our children have grown up as if they live in war zones. They have not received the mental health support, nor have the families who've lost loved ones to violence, have not received the support systems that they need. People are coming out of COVID, they need mental health counseling. So we have to reimagine all of that. We have to have a mayor who has the heart for it. Our young people, Reverend Jackson is taking the vote today. Downtown, they're having masses of students eligible to vote, to take them downtown to vote today. And that's what we have to do, take people to the polls. Everything is at stake, education and economics.
And you need to understand just how much the mayor controls. Pastor Thurston, 1 minute.
Regression versus progression. Everything Paul Vallis says, bring back old cops out of retirement. Let's go back to the old ways that I did things when I ran CPS. Everything Brandon is saying, new, fresh, creative, let's be innovative. Which way do we want to go and what's going to be better for the city? I think moving forward is the best process for us.
And you know what? I want you all to stay on with us, Attorney Aaron Connolly and Pastor Stephen Thurston and Reverend Jeanette Wilson, Pastor Jeanette Wilson, because we're going to be talking with Jim Daly of the Tribe to find out about the privatization record, because that's something that Mr. Vallis pushes back on. What's at stake? Attorney Aaron Connolly, 1 minute.
Well, I think so much is at stake with this, and I'm grateful that, you know, we have a full accounting of these records, right, for so many of these folks, and it's really frustrating to see on, frankly, my consultative side of my work with these candidates is people that have been in the game a long time haven't been properly vetted the way we think they have sometimes, and so it really is important to shine a light on all of these past, quote-unquote, experiences that are touted as a positive and often aren't really if we dig a little deeper. So I'm really grateful that Chicago takes this seriously, and more serious than we've seen in previous generations of who we're putting, you know, who we're giving control of our future over to, right? This is a big deal. So I'm grateful for this conversation. Look forward to it, Santita. Thank you.
Of course, stay right here. Let's talk with the Tribe about the privatization record of Mr. Paul Vallis, who will be joining me on Thursday. We're going to have Brandon Johnson on Friday, and we're going to have them on again next week. I want you to be able to hear and make up your minds, because I see a lot of people, not most, but a nice chunk are undecided. But the more that they hear, the better able they are to make the decision that makes them most comfortable. So let's have at it, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278. Want to give these tickets away. You've got to join us at this debate. You will be in the room with Paul Vallis. You will be in the room with Brandon Johnson. And I want you to continue to send these questions into me so that you can, so that you might hear them answer the things that are really on your mind. All right, everybody, stay right here for more of the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Okay, beautiful people. We're going to have the Tribe on here. Love it, love it. Jeanette, did you hear that this Silicon Valley Bank, the biggest deposit accounts held more than $13 billion, and that is what the government paid out?
No, I did not.
Oh, man. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And then the people in Philly, they're trying to figure out that every day they're getting alerts. Well, the water might be, we'll see how safe it is at 3:30. I'm like, are you serious right now? Huh?
Well, you know, Congressman Jackson was at Push Saturday, and he did a comparison of the Silicon Valley Bank bailout. And when Freedom Bank had problems, it had no support from the federal government. When you look at the city of Chicago, we had 6 black banks. Now we have 0. It's something about our inability to get the protections that the majority banks have, majority financial institutions receive.
Well, we're not unable. They're unwilling to give us the
Ms.
cover.
Jackson, Jim Daly's on.
Okay, thank you. We're not. There's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with the system because they're only willing to protect them.
The system does not protect or provide for us. Same thing with contracting. We know how to build a house. We know how to build skyscrapers and work on them, but we don't have the access. When Reverend Thurston talks about access to capital and deal flow, we don't have that, and we have to begin to demand that at every level of government.
But let me welcome Jim Daly to the show. Of course, we are so excited to have you here with us today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us because we absolutely want to hear from about all of this work that you all have been doing on school privatization. You're on with Jeanette Wilson. She, of course, is from Rainbow Push. She's head of the Push Excel program. And you have got one of the pastors of New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church. He is the recently retired teaching pastor at Salem Baptist Church under Reverend James Meeks. And then Attorney Aaron Connolly, brilliant political strategist and organizer. And so we welcome you to the show, Mr. Daly.
Thank you.
And so,
thank you very much.
Can you give us a brief overview of what you're going to be discussing today?
So in terms of school privatization, I can talk about the history of it here in Chicago.
Please. What was your article about itself?
Sure. So my article goes back to the beginning of Paul Vallis's career as a school administrator, and we talked to people in cities across the country who have worked in school districts where Mr. Vallis has been an administrator to just get a sense of what that looks like everywhere. So Mr. Vallis was brought on as the first CEO of the Chicago Public Schools by Richie Daley back in 1995 after Daley took control of the school board with the help of a Republican-controlled legislature in Springfield. Previous to that, the school board was elected from local school councils, but Daley put Vallis in charge, and they set out pretty quickly privatizing and expanding charter schools here in Chicago. And after working here for 7 years, Mr. Vallis went to Philadelphia, then to New Orleans, then to Bridgeport, Connecticut. And the people that I talked to in each city talked about lots of, the institution of zero tolerance policies on black and brown kids in schools, the expansion of these disciplinary alternative schools with very harsh draconian rules. And ultimately, a lot of promises that didn't pan out in terms of test scores, improvement overall, and ultimately in a number of districts in New Orleans and in New Orleans and Bridgeport, the school district wound up being the subject of lawsuits while Mr. Vallis was there for various discriminatory policies. That's basically what the article covers.
Okay, I wanted you to give an overview we're on Facebook Live, and give an overview to the panel. They've all read this, and so we are looking forward to having you on, very much looking forward to having you on, and we really, really appreciate and admire the work that you and your colleagues at the Tribe have done. Really.
Thank you.
So there we go. So everybody, let's get ready for the show. But keep talking. But because
live?
Oh no! Oh no! I stay on Facebook Live because I've got to keep my my audience want to stay engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, but you did a great job. You're good.
Thank you.
You're good. You are good. You are good. You are good. But I always like to give people, a little bit of advance notice.
Sure.
If I can.
Sure.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
So, of course. So, everybody, let's, I want you all to come to the event on Friday. So, please call me at 773-763-9278 so that you can be in the audience. 773-763-WCPT. Call me right now. All right, stand by, and we're going to have John Nichols at the bottom of the hour. He is looking at the national implications of this race. This is drawing a lot of national, indeed a lot of international attention. And so we cannot wait to talk with Jim Daly about this and what all of this means. What does it all mean? What does the song say? What's it all about, Alfie? What is it all about? I don't know. There's a lot going on, I tell you that. So, okay, let me see. Okay.
One question would be, what would be the process that
15 seconds.
Each of these candidates would use?
Hold on, I'm gonna bring it up to you, okay? Hold on, because we're about to come up.
Stand by.
Mm-hmm.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. You're all giving a lot of wonderful comments, but it would be really great if we could hear you on the radio. And so call me at 773-763-9278. And if you want to get tickets to this debate, it's going to be a debate, not a forum like we had the last time. It's a debate between Paul Vallas and Brandon Johnson. What do you think is going to happen on Friday? I think it's going to be an exciting debate. It's one that is needed. It's one that is needed. We've had a lot of them around town, but what's different about this is it's a people's debate. So I need you to continue to send me your questions. I'm going to submit them, and hopefully they'll make the cut. More of the Santita Jackson as we go forward. Chicago high of 46 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 36 degrees, partly cloudy. March Madness, the Final Four are set, everybody. Oh! On the women's side, South Carolina, will they repeat? Will they be national champions once more? Go Dawn Staley pulling. I guess you know who I'm pulling for. Virginia Tech, LSU, and Iowa. But I love all of these women and all the great work that they are doing thanks to Title IX in sport. And on the men's side, Miami, UConn, Florida Atlantic, and San Diego State. Who will be the champs? We'll see on Monday. In the NBA, the Timberwolves 119, the Kings 115, the Clippers 124, the Bulls 112. In the NHL, the Stars will be playing Chicago, and the Wild were triumphant last night. Dedicating the show today to two icons, or actually three. Today would have been the 101st birthday of the great journalist, Lou Palmer. No one did more to help Harold Washington become the icon that he became. No one did more. No one did more to beat the drums, to put out the information to the community, not just to the black community, but for those of us who were living on the downside of advantage, than Lou Palmer and his beautiful, brilliant wife, Georgia Palmer. Sending much love to him as he and his wife rest in eternity today. But knowing them, they're not resting. They're not resting. And then, of course, Randall Robinson, the iconic head of Trans-Africa, and Ed Gardner, Soft Sheen, Black on Black Love, one of the principal funders of the Harold Washington campaign. Randall Robinson, who did so much to bring the African diaspora together, who really led the campaign that had us all arrested at the South African Embassy in Washington, D.C., shining a light on apartheid in South Africa, made his transition. Both of them made their transition over the past few days. You're going to be hearing more about them and the tremendous impact that they've had on all of our lives as we go forward over the next few days. Everybody, let's get some of these headlines On the Santita Jackson Show, yet another shooting. Police in Nashville are working to uncover a motive in the mass shooting and the mass shooter that killed 6 people at a Christian elementary school on Monday in Nashville, Tennessee. The shooter identified as a 28-year-old transgender woman as a former student. They were shot and killed by police during the attack, leaving behind drawn-out maps of the campus detailing how this was all going to take place. Philadelphia officials are set to provide an update on the city's water safety this morning following a recent chemical spill in the Delaware River that left many residents concerned about possible contamination. City officials have said that the water supply is safe to drink and use until at least 3:30 p.m. They've been doing that day by day by day by day. We're dealing with the same kind of issue in Minneapolis, St. Paul, in Minnesota. There was a chemical spill at one of the nuclear plants. And then we found out on Friday, after they talked about the chemical spill from the nuclear plant on Friday, that there had actually been one in November that they hadn't told anyone about. Think about that, everybody. Embattled Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who, interestingly enough, was raised in Philly, announced Monday that he will delay plans to overhaul the country's judiciary amid widespread strikes and protests throughout the country. And President Joe Biden's student loan debt relief program faces a new threat from Senate Republicans after nearly 40 senators introduced a resolution yesterday to overturn the plan. But to show you who's in the money, guess what? They're calling this the billionaire bailout. That is, of course, the Silicon Valley bailout. According to this story from Common Dreams, in prepared testimony for a Senate Banking Committee hearing slated for Tuesday morning today, the chair of the FDIC reveals that the 10 largest deposit accounts at the Silicon Valley Bank held a combined $13.3 billion, a detail that's likely to intensify criticism of federal regulators' intervention in the firm's recent collapse. And remember, the government made that right. They paid that money. They ensured that those 10 depositors got their money. Wow. $13.3 billion. Will you get a little bit of justice, a little bit of love? Well, we will see, everybody. You know, the Tribe is a tremendous media outlet that does so much to give, really, they do a lot of research about issues that mean so much to us on the ground. They help us to become really engaged in what's happening in Chicago on so many different levels. And we are, of course, Pastor Stephen Thurston, New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church, formerly of Salem Baptist Church, but I know you will always keep them in your heart. Attorney Aaron Connolly, brilliant political strategist and political organizer, and of course, the head of Push Excel and the pastor of the Maple Church in, of course, United Methodist Church in Maple Park United Methodist Church here in Chicago, Pastor Jeanette Wilson. We welcome to the show the news editor of the Tribe, Jim Daly, who wrote in this headline piece, Paul Vallis's Trail of School Privatization. On April 4th, he wrote, Chicago voters will decide between 2 candidates with starkly different visions for the city and its 340,000 public school students. One is Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson, a former public school teacher and seasoned organizer for the Chicago Teachers Union. The other is Paul Vallis, the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools from 1995 to 2002 and a longtime proponent of charter schools in districts he's managed around the country. The election, he continues, is a flashpoint, not just in the struggle for the direction the CPS will take, but also in the battle for the future of public schools nationwide, whether it will be one of school choice, which broadly includes expanding open enrollment programs, vouchers, and charter schools, or reinvestment in traditional neighborhood schools staffed by unionized teachers. We welcome to the show and hope that it will not be your last time joining us, Jim Daly, news editor from the Tribe. Tell us about this article. What are some of your findings?
Thank you, Santita. So we looked at school districts where Mr. Vallis has been an administrator for the past 30 years or so. And what we found was that, in every school district,
you have 2 callers wanting tickets.
Same model, which was to close neighborhood schools that were staffed by unionized teachers, lay off unionized teachers who are often older Black professionals, and bring in Teach for America teachers who are young younger, whiter college graduates without much experience to staff privatized charter schools. And the charter schools, the way that they work is, where the traditional model is, you would send your kids to your neighborhood school, which would be fully funded. All neighborhood schools would be, get equal funding and ideally be have the same quality. Instead, you can try to send your kid to any school in the city that would take them. But there's, in charter schools, they are, one of the ways that they work is they're selective. So if a child who's sent to a charter school is not performing up to their standards or has struggles with disciplinary problems, they can be sent right back to a traditional school. One person I spoke to, an educator in Little Rock, said that often when kids come back to the traditional schools from charter schools, they do so with deficits. And ultimately, nationwide, Mr. Vallis just greatly increased charter schools everywhere he went. New Orleans, where he was school administrator after Hurricane Katrina, is now a 100% privatized charter school network where there's something like 40 different charter companies operating there. They all operate independently of one another and don't coordinate at all. In Philadelphia, I believe there's 83 charter schools now. Mr. Vallis opened at least 15 of them while he was there over the protests of the teachers union there, which called for a moratorium on them in 2006 while he was administrator. And ultimately, all of this, to put this into context historically, the movement for school choice is one that has become more popular among white conservatives in the last 10, 20 years. But it really got its start more than 50 years ago. The idea of fighting against these neighborhood schools happened shortly after, first happened shortly after Brown versus Board of Education was passed. And, part of the reason for that is because schools were being desegregated, equality, equity was being, promoted in public schools. And white people reacted to that two ways. They left neighborhoods that black people were able to move into for the suburbs, and they left school districts that black kids were able to be desegregated into for private schools, parochial schools, suburban schools, and now charter schools.
Call us at 773-763-9278. What do you think about that? And of course, what do you think about these findings? Just very quickly, because I've got to go to these callers. Reverend Thurston, because Mr. Vallis pushes back against the narrative that he advanced the privatization of schools. You've heard him do it. What do you make of that, of this investigation?
The most illiterate people in the 21st century aren't those who can't read or write, but those who can't learn, unlearn, and then relearn. Anybody who's voting for Paul Vallis, based upon the clear findings that this amazing article represent people who don't know how to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Aaron Connolly? Attorney Connolly?
Well, Mr. Vallis does have a very clear record, as we've heard by this excellent reporting that, does the due diligence to talk to the folks who either grew up under these policies or have experienced the very real consequences. And we were able to hear from some of the organizers and teachers who were in these districts a couple weeks ago at this Women for Brandon event and an Educators for Brandon event that talked about really what's at stake here for Chicago moving forward. This is a very long, detailed, consistent record of privatization, of union busting, of making sure that the folks, if we look at the numbers, if we look at who is contributing, it makes a lot of sense, right? It makes a lot of sense when we take a look at the donors at play here and who's contributing to this race, who wants to continue to make these choices for a system that doesn't have the working families of Chicago in mind, right? And we see the very real push and the successful push for an elected school board to come back to the city of Chicago under a very progressive state legislature, right? And that process is going to start. The next mayor will help that process and start that migration. And it's very, very important that we have someone who understands what teachers and what those Chicago public school students really need, not the folks making money off those students. They're more than a number on
Sure.
a spreadsheet.
Sure. Pastor Jeanette Wilson, 1 minute.
Well, I think we have to look at how it is this mayor, whoever is elected, will really administer this city. You have an educator in Brandon Johnson. You have a non-educator, a business person, more than anything, in Dallas. And so who do you want to head the city of Chicago? What kind of approach do you want to have in the city of Chicago as we look at schools, as we look at the administration of the city? You got the planning department. How are we going to make sure that we invest south and west as Mayor Lightfoot started? How do we continue that investment? I would ask which of these, how would these mayoral candidates select staff? You are only known by the staff you have, the quality of the people that you hire to head these departments, to run these agencies. And that will tell me how inclusive this mayor will be, whoever it is, how this mayor will engage the communities. The 77 communities in the city of Chicago will have input in streets and sand, planning, zoning, the health department, the housing department, the homeless, people that take care of our homeless. Who will head those departments? That matters to us. How
That's
will
right.
you determine who's qualified to do that? And so I think we have to look, and even the police chief, where will that person come from? Will it be rank and file? Will it be someone that has leadership in the Fraternal Order of Police? All of those factors will help inform us as to who we're voting for and why we're voting for them. And people need to stop being confused.
Absolutely.
I just tell people, use your ABCs. If you know how to do ABCs, you vote ABC to Z.
Well,
Based on last name of the person.
But I tell you what we have to do is continue to educate people, because I can tell you,
That's right.
as push has been at its zenith in breadbasket, when Reverend Jackson was functioning at the full height of his powers, that's what we did every day of the week. Push was only closed on Sundays. And then Push people were meeting each other in church, and we've got to get back to that. The building can't be closed. It's open, everybody. And on Election Day, it will be open, starting, I think, at 6 a.m., right?
6 a.m. And I'm making sure that lawyers will be connecting to Push. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights will be out, and we want the Cook County Bar, the American Bar, the Chicago Bar, connect to Push, because we want to be able to deploy lawyers to these polling places where there are issues. We want
and they will be
everybody
there.
to be engaged.
And you can always call 773-FREEDOM if you're having trouble at the polls. We will connect you to people who can help you. We need the lawyers to be on site. Let me get Tanya.
On site.
Tanya, what's on your mind today? You won these tickets. Yay!
Yes. Thank you so very much, Santita.
Yay! What do you expect to see at this debate, and what do you want to see or hear?
Oh my God, there's so much. Education, safety, homelessness. There is a multitude of issues that we face.
Okay, so it's not just one thing. You're saying education, safety, homelessness. It's interesting that you're bringing everything together. And would you say hello to me so I can give you a big hug on Friday?
Yes, I will. I always do, my sister. Thank you so much, and good morning to everybody, the panel, and my morning stars.
You're calling in for them. We love you, Tanya. Let me go to Joyce. She won tickets, and she has a comment. How you doing, Joyce?
I'm good, Santita. This is the first time I've called you.
I'm so glad that you have.
And a lot of the answers is in the Reader magazine for March the 23rd about what happened to the school system here in Chicago. I was part of it, so I know it is true. Mm-hmm. March the 23rd, 2023, it's an article about the Chicago public schools. It is phenomenal. Please audience read it, and you'll see what happens. And we need to be very careful how we handle this educational issue. Yes, the police too, but educational. We all went through a school system. Everyone that's talking now had a teacher. They went through the school system. They know they don't have to. Everyone hasn't been a policeman, but everyone has been in a school. So let's think about that. And that's number one. If they read that article, you'll see what happened to the system all around where Mr. Vallis has been. I've worked under him too. He's a pretty good guy, but he's not good for this particular time.
But I think it's important, Ms. Joyce, to make that point. I mean, this is not Congressman Jonathan Jackson made that point. He was like, personally, I like him. I just don't think what he's going to do for the schools and for you is going to be in your best interest. It will be in the best interest of corporations.
Absolutely.
But let me bring on Jim Daly for these last few minutes here. And the last 3 minutes belong to you, Jim Daly. I mean, why do you think that this particular aspect of the race is so important? I mean, indeed, one of your interviewees, an educator, Ms. Schneider, said, he was always trying to get back to Chicago. And my question is, why? What was he going to do?
Well, I think Mr. Vallis has long had a personal ambition to be mayor of Chicago. This is, supposedly part of the reason why Richie Daley got rid of him was because Mr. Vallis was getting too fancy for him and was looking at the chair. Since then, he has run for mayor. He's run for governor. He's always wanted to be in executive office in Illinois for his own personal ambition. I think that the schools issue, his school's background is very important because that is where we've seen his record in public service. And that gives us an idea of what his, if he were elected mayor, what his administration would be like and what it would value. And at least in the education sector, it values these charter schools, it values privatization, it values putting military academies in communities that don't always want them, and those communities are overwhelmingly black and brown communities. On the campaign trail, Mr. Vallis has talked about using military schools as a pipeline to recruit CPD officers, but he hasn't really talked a lot about investing in neighborhood schools. He hasn't really talked a lot about the sorts of things that parents and teachers talk about in terms of getting nurses into schools. He talks about expanding school hours, but doesn't say who's going to staff the schools into the dinner hour or how we would pay for that. And so I think all of that matters when we're evaluating Mr. Vallis as a candidate. And I think we really have to listen to the people on the ground in these cities, the teachers, the parents, the activists who understand his track record and have some lessons, have some education to share with the voters of Chicago. And I think it's really important to bring all of that to the polls when you go to vote, and just understand exactly who you're voting for and exactly what his record says for the future of Chicago.
Jim Daly, news editor for The Tribe. I hope that you will come back, certainly before April 4th. I mean, because I think it's very, very important because, he pushes back on this particular narrative. He says, hey, I didn't start this. Look at Arnie Duncan, everybody. Look. I'm like, but when you went to New Orleans, now they don't even have a regular public school. It's 100% charter schools. Come on. Why?
Absolutely agree. And, Mr. Vallis can push back all he wants, but if you read the article, we've got the receipts and we link out the entire record. So it's there for your listeners to see for themselves.
Well, maybe you can come back on Thursday. He'll be on from 7 to 7:30, and I'd love to hear your reaction to that interview if you have the time. From 7:30 to 8, I'd love to get your rate. Well, if you can. Hey.
Maybe. I'll have to check my schedule, but yeah, I'd love to.
Check, please, because I would like to know. What is this saying? Everybody, John Nichols is going to continue this conversation. This race has got Bernie Sanders coming in to support Brandon Johnson on Thursday. There's going to be a big rally. Jim Clyburn is coming in to support Brandon Johnson. Something is going on, everybody, and a lot of people are lining up in this race. They're not all lining up behind Brandon Johnson. You've got a lot of people in the black professional class who are like, look, the CTU has done some things that I do not like. He's in their back pocket. want to hear what your thoughts are. Because the CTU is also for affordable housing. They fight for your children, everybody in, nobody out. They do that. I don't hear anyone complaining about that. Or maybe you will. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Does anyone want to stay with John Nichols?
I need to roll out.
Okay.
I need to roll out, too.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Santita.
Oh,
All
of
right.
course, of course. Jim Daly, let me know what your availability is on Thursday, please.
I will. Yeah, I'll let you know later today.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Santita.
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good day, y'all.
Sending you all so much love. Oh, got my John Nichols coming in here. And congratulations to the winners. I think I have another set of tickets to give away. Okay, to give away, not away. Okay. Okay, here we go.
Mr. Nichols is on.
Fantastic. John Nichols, how are you?
I am very well. How are you?
Oh, boy. We are locked in the midst of this race. But look, you've got this Wisconsin race, too, that many people are talking about for the Supreme Court. They're saying that this could help turn the tide in the 2024 presidential election. There's a lot going on, John Nichols. Oh.
Yes, there is.
Wednesday, a chance for some
Political springs.
Oh.
Miss Jackson, is Miss Connolly going to stay on the segment?
If she'd like. Aaron?
Yes, is it all right if I stick around or you want me off?
Absolutely no. It's the only time I have to move people off. We have fewer lines for people to call in on. So when I have to release you, it's because I have to free up a line. Because, when I started here, there were 10 lines. So I could get 4 and 5 guests and then have 5 more open. I lost 2 lines when I got here and then 2 more. So it gets tight. It gets tight. And Alex, let me introduce Aaron Connolly, John Nichols, national correspondent for The Nation magazine. John, what is your latest book?
Oh, it's I guess the book with Bernie, with Senator Sanders.
Yes.
Yeah. It's okay to be angry about capitalism.
Yes. And it's a huge hit.
And Aaron and I have we've had.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any chance you'll be here when Bernie Sanders is in town?
1 minute.
It would be very nice.
I think he's going to be in on Thursday.
Yes, it would be very nice if you were here.
He's going to be in on Thursday, and then we have a big Northwest Side rally with Ayanna Pressley and some other congressional members of.
Oh wow! Who else is coming to the congressional rally?
I can let you know who else is confirmed. I know we have the itinerary coming out today.
30 seconds.
Sure, Ayanna Pressley, who's of course, from Chicago, will be joining.
Yeah, she's got deep roots there, and she's very proud of those roots. Mm-hmm. It's a big part of her life.
Absolutely.
And her mom, I think, is her mom still around?
I don't know.
I believe so. We will have to find out.
10 seconds.
And she
Stand by.
Often of coming
Stand
up
by,
with her
everybody.
mom in
We're coming
Chicago.
out.
Stand by.
Stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. You know it's the bottom of the hour in the second hour on the Santita Jackson Show, so that means it's time to hear from John Nichols, who now, of course, is the national correspondent of The Nation magazine. He and Senator Bernie Sanders have a bestseller on their hands. What's the name of this book?
It's okay to be angry about capitalism.
Who's going to get me in trouble? This is my guy.
Oh, I don't think... You know, the funny thing is, I think an awful lot of people seem to be interested in that message.
You know, it's interesting.
In,
I feel like we've gone back to the 20s and 30s, another time of economic and social and political and cultural tumult, when you had more space to identify with a lot of different political and operational philosophies, right? I mean, you had people who were openly socialist, who were openly communist, who were openly this, that, and the other. I mean, and the thing is, John Nichols, when we really look at the system, it's a mixed system. It's a hybrid system.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that our bankers are communists, the Chinese, and our best friends are socialists, the British. So, you know, who am I? I mean, so, like, what are you talking about?
The only thing I would say to that wise observation is that in America, we've always had many streams of thought, and they have taken us in many directions. And I've always argued that one of the great things about America is that at our best, when we don't dismiss good ideas, when we say, well, wherever that idea came from, may come from the most rural place, the most urban place, the most remote place, the most populated place, may come from people who've always had power or from people who haven't had power. And it may come from a libertarian. It may come from a socialist. If we're open to it and we say, well, maybe we won't adopt the whole set of ideas, but we want to be open to a good idea that might help us get someplace, it's my view that it's in such moments that we achieve great things, right? That it's like in life. If you've got a lot of friends, you may have a friend who's got good advice on relationships, but lousy advice on, jobs, and vice versa. If you learn to take the good ideas along the way, I think you're strengthened, right? You're in a better place. And one of the things the senator and I argue in the book is that you don't have to take every aspect of any ideology to perhaps get to a better place, but you do have to be open. And the challenge that we've got right now is we've been so open to uber capitalism, to sort of out-of-control capitalism, whatever the market wants to do, that we've ended up in a situation in this country where we have incredible income inequality, where healthcare is not treated as a right, where education is not treated as a right, and where we've got a lot of people who are suffering. They shouldn't be suffering in the wealthiest country in the world. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we mean by it's okay to be angry about capitalism. You can express that anger and, say, look, we can make it better.
Well, I'm fascinated, and I cannot wait to have you back on to talk about this because, you have a lot of streams of thought to me that are dangerous. You had Prince William who said that there are too many people in the world, the animal to human ratio is off. The New Scientist produced this article, that reducing inequality could see the world, really, parenthetically, must see the world population fall to 6 billion. I mean, it opens talking about, the global population will peak at 8.6 billion in 2050. And of course, the 8 billionth person was reportedly just born a few weeks ago. But in order for us to achieve equality, it needs to fall to 6 billion. So who's going to be eliminated? I mean, there's something, the thinking that we have is off.
I'm uncomfortable with that thinking. I'll tell you why.
I'm uncomfortable with it too, but you know what? It's out there when you have the Prince of Wales saying that the animal to human ratio is off, too many children. I'm like, what? My mother said, when you all were born, we couldn't afford any of you. Who do you want me to put back?
Well, let me offer another notion in this regard as well, and that is that when we move toward actual equality, where we get people access to basic needs, healthcare, housing, food, good jobs that actually pay you. If you work 40 hours a week, you don't live in poverty. The evidence from around the world is that birth rates drop. They don't increase. If you look at many of the European countries, and so if you want to deal with a booming population and the challenges that come with it, I think the answer is to move toward more fairness and more justice and more equality. Not to talk about eliminating anybody or something like that. I mean, I think that's exactly the wrong way to think about it. I think in a world with so much abundance, with so much wealth concentrated in the hands of so very few, we should begin by looking at ways to get more equity, more fairness, more comfort for the great mass of people. And it's my view that in that, people are then freed to make decisions about, all the aspects of their lives. And I know maybe I'm naive in this regard, but having grown up in rural Wisconsin, small towns, and having lived in big cities, my experience of humanity is that, if they're given some security and some comfort, people tend to make the right decisions. Absolutely.
And they don't start talking about needing fewer people so that we can all have more. That's just crazy. My pastor, it's sick. It really is, but it's out there. I mean, my pastor said, I've never seen God make a mouth that God could not feed. And I closed the door on that. But let's talk about the Chicago mayoral race, because it has national implications, and we're watching Brandon Johnson, who started off, I think, as a fairly strong candidate, always polled somewhere in the middle, so he was never out of it, but he's continued to go from strength to strength, and now he's surging in the final weeks of the campaign. Why do you think he's surging? Endorsements, yeah, but it's got to be something else. But also, I agree. What is it that the national implications, why is this race so important to so many people? It's bringing Jim Clyburn in here. It's bringing Bernie Sanders in here. You've had Elizabeth Warren, who felt compelled to weigh in. Let's start there. The national implications. What's the deal? Let's start with the national implications, but let's not forget that other aspect of what you're talking about as regards the surge, because there is more to it than just endorsements and things of that nature, although they matter. So, and one final thing before I get into those national implications, just let me offer this notion. If you're in politics, the time to surge is toward the end. Why? Right? So, well, because you want to be rising, so there's a momentum as you go toward Election Day, and Brandon Johnson's got that, and that's a rare element, a rare commodity in politics, and so he is a very lucky, perhaps very blessed, perhaps very smart, very strategic candidate who's ended up in a very good place to have these polls getting very close at the end. That builds the energy, that builds momentum. And it also builds excitement about the race. And you're right, this race has been nationalized. It's become a race that people across the country are watching and caring about. I wrote about it yesterday for The Nation, and, it shot to the top of stories, right? Everybody wanted to read about what was going on in Chicago. And it's true, people are very interested in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race as well. That's been true for months, right? That's been well-defined as a race of national consequence. But what we've seen in the last few weeks is that the Chicago race has taken on a similar character. And people have begun to understand that this really is, in many ways, a referendum on where the Democratic Party will go, right? Will it go toward its progressive ideals, the ideals of a Elizabeth Warren, a Bernie Sanders, and if you dig more deeply, of a Reverend Jesse Jackson with the Rainbow campaigns of the 1980s, seeking a broad coalition, multiracial, multi-ethnic, that has as its vision justice for all? Or will you go toward a more corporate, more elite vision that suggests, well, somebody very wealthy knows all the answers, and somebody very powerful has, all the right calculations? That's really the choice between Brandon Johnson and Paul Vallas. Vallas has adopted many of the center-right and even more conservative views as regards education, as regards policing, a host of other issues. And there's a lot of pressure on the Democratic Party to go that direction, and on politics in general to go toward this more conservative approach. Johnson has courageously, even in this time of all sorts of pressures and all sorts of cross currents, gone into this race as someone with clarity.
Again, that's somebody in the tradition of Reverend Jackson, of Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. He's gone forward and said, look, these are the things I believe in. I think you can tax the rich, that you can use those resources to do more for schools, that you can do more for public services, that you can reform policing in a way that makes people safer, makes neighborhoods more secure, and that addresses the whole of the challenges facing society. So a real big difference between these candidates. And I think people around the country have become aware of that. They've become conscious. Now, it cuts both ways, because when the very, very wealthy, the very powerful see a city that might go in a progressive direction, they'll jump in and back the more conservative candidate. They'll move more resources there because they don't want that example. That example is very, very powerful. Understand what happened in 1983 in Chicago. Harold Washington, who wasn't expected to win, put together the right coalition and became mayor of Chicago. Out of that victory in 1983 came a wave of victories across the country in other cities. Even, obviously the rainbow had its roots, much before that, but helped to empower this concept that Reverend Jackson could run for the presidency of the United States. All of these doors opened up because you had a victory in Chicago. And what I want to suggest to you is that Brandon Johnson, if he wins, and this is certainly not guaranteed, this is a very close race, but if Brandon Johnson wins, that message to the rest of the country will be incredibly powerful. He will become one of the top mayors in the country. He will be a face of a new progressive movement, and he will do so as a teacher and an organizer, a union organizer. I mean, what a powerful message at this moment in our history. So that's what's at stake.
But I want you to go to, because, just coming out of the rainbow and the push that corporate, the DLC, which was Clinton, which was Sam Nunn, Chuck Robb, it was Al Gore, they wanted to corporatize the party. And this has been a fight over the past 40 years. And it seems that, we were right in the midst of it, and we were fighting and pushing back on the tide that had won some, lost some. But it seems that, we're circling back to that, because I'm wondering how this populist, how this might change Democratic Party politics, which still hews toward that which is corporatist, right? Even though the energy is coming from the populist, it's coming from the Bernie Sanders and the Elizabeth Warrens. I mean, that's where it's coming from. The squad, Jamal and everybody, is coming from that direction.
Of course, and you are so right to home in on that, because, look, it's always been.
You have a caller.
Right. This goes back to the 1940s, the 1930s. There's always been a struggle for the Democratic Party. The Republican Party has defined itself, right? And it's tended to define itself as more corporate, in recent years as more extreme on a host of issues. And so the Republican Party is what it is. You can like it, you can dislike it, it is what it is. The great struggle is for definition of the Democratic Party. And is the Democratic Party slightly better than the Republicans, right? A little bit more humane, perhaps, or a little more inclined toward justice, right? Or is it a lot more, right? It's this question of what kind of have as a country. And of course, the very, very powerful folks, the very wealthy, the very connected folks, they don't want a lot of change. What's going on?
This change.
Organization of our economy right now, but the organization of our economy right now is pretty good for them, right? We have billionaires getting richer. Banks, if they get into trouble, they get bailed out, or their investors get bailed out. The system works pretty well for them. The system doesn't work so well for a working mom, for a young person trying to get an education, for an older person who's ready for retirement and now being told, well, maybe you're going to have to work 2 or 3 or 4 more years because, we want to, restructure Social Security, not by making the wealthy pay their fair share, but by making working class people work more. I mean, you understand the calculus on all of these things is really a choice, right? It's a choice between whether we, benefit the many, we benefit the few. And if corporate interests, wealthy interests, get control of the Democratic Party, and especially in a city like Chicago, that's very, very good for the elites, right? It's like, well, there's no alternative. Got to in most places you have a choice between Democrats and Republicans. The Republicans may be very extreme. They may frighten some people on some of the stands they take, some of the things they do. The Democrats may not be quite so extreme, but we're told, well, that's the whole choice, right? And what's happening in Chicago is that Brandon Johnson, as a candidate, is saying, no, there's another choice. And that other choice is economic and social and racial justice, caring for the planet, creating a community that has a really much fairer economic calculus and has a much fairer social calculus, and ultimately, and related to all of this, a much fairer racial calculus. And so you end up coming to a point where we can start to really talk about justice. Now, that's what Johnson is proposing. And he's been very clear on this. He has stuck to a basic set of ideals, and it has now gotten him to a point where he is, essentially in a tie with Paul Vallis. I can tell you there's a lot of pundits that 2 or 3 weeks ago would have told you that was impossible. Mm-hmm. It hasn't proven to be impossible. It's proven to be highly possible. And part of it is that Brandon Johnson is young. He came into this race not as well known as Paul Vallis. There's no question of that. So one of the things that has happened is that a lot of people did something that is somewhat rare in politics. They took a little bit of a risk. They said, this young teacher, organizer, county commissioner, he really can be the mayor of this city, and I'm going to step forward and say that publicly. And so you saw Chuy Garcia, one of the key primary candidates for mayor, who has obviously a strong following in the Hispanic and Latino community. He stepped forward. You saw the Reverend Jesse Jackson step forward and say, yes, this is a race that matters. This is something big, and it has meaning for Chicago. You saw these national figures, as you've mentioned, some members of Congress, including Senator Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, more and more members of the House stepping up. And so you've got this situation where in Chicago itself and at the national level, a growing number of people are saying, Brandon Johnson can do this. That has helped him because it has caused people who maybe for whatever reason might have had their doubts to take a deeper look at him. An endorsement, by the way, Santita, does not necessarily make somebody vote for a candidate. That's the thing that a lot of political analysts lose sight of. An endorsement makes somebody look anew at that candidate, right? It says, you're going to make your own choice. There's no question of that. But maybe you should take a deeper look at this individual. Maybe you should try to understand them a little better because you might like them, right? And so I think that's the power of these endorsements that Brandon Johnson has gotten, is that it's caused a lot of people in Chicago who maybe didn't know him as well or who are just getting to know him to say, okay, wow, let me look at what he's saying. Let me look at his platform. When they've done so, you've seen those numbers move exponentially in his direction.
Well, hold on. I want to bring in one of your fellow Wisconsinites, Robert, who's called in. He says he has a question for you. Robert, what's on your mind today, sweetie?
Yes. Good morning, Santita. Good morning, John. My question is this. I was really surprised that James Clyburn is coming to Chicago for Brandon. If we think back to the campaign, Senator Sanders was going to win. Biden's campaign was on life support.
Yes.
And then Obama put the thumb on the scales, and everyone chimed in to kind of, in South Carolina is really what saved Biden. Do you think this is some kind of wedge developing between Clyburn and Biden? And what does it say about, not just the Chicago race, but, Biden's reelection chances? Are we going to see a primary maybe in his future?
No, very good question, and good insights on all of our politics. I don't see it as a wedge, though. What I'd suggest to you is that Jim Clyburn is a very savvy politician. He's more centrist than some Democrats, but I think that he understands some of the things we've just been talking about. These great struggles as regards where the party will go. And while Clyburn has not certainly been as always as progressive as some other folks, he's not as right wing as some people paint him. And so I think that he's quite close to where Biden is on a lot of issues. And my sense is that Clyburn looked around the country, and as he has sometimes in the past, saw a young candidate coming up, a young black candidate coming up, and thought, this guy's got potential. He can be a leader. And he came in for Brandon Johnson. I'll admit to you, I was a little surprised.
Yeah, but may I jump in here? You want to know why I'm not surprised? Sure. Reverend Jackson got 78% of the black vote in when he ran the first time. He got more than 95% when he ran the second time. But in between 83, 84, and 87, 88, a lot of black people who did not support Reverend Jackson lost their seats. They lost their credibility.
I understand what you're saying.
Oh, I'm just saying, because to your point, he is a savvy politician. And sometimes what you try to do is you try to co-opt these people, Brandon Johnson and the populace, because that is where the energy is, Robert and John, in the party, because it's in the zeitgeist. It's the spirit of the times.
I couldn't agree with you more. And
Caller's off.
One other notion. You're suggesting maybe you use the word co-opt. Let me offer another word, right? Or another phrase, and that is learn from. Right? That we always presume that people in power are set in their place, right? But in my experience, the wisest people in power are not set in their place. They've always got their eyes open. They're always looking at what's happening, as you suggest, the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. They look around and they say, things seem to be changing here. Am I in touch with where that change is going? Or do I want to be at odds with that change? Do I want to fight it? And a wise political figure will often say, no, I mean, this is good. What's happening here is positive. I want to be a part of it. I want to encourage it. And I want to be associated with it. I want my name to be associated with it, because politicians want their names to be associated with that which succeeds. In fact, one thing, Robert, that you might put in the mix here is that James Clyburn, as a savvy pol, may have looked at Chicago and said, you know what, I think Brandon Johnson might win that race, and I want to be a part of that win.
I need to be, because we got 2024. And if Biden is going to have a prayer and he's going to need all the help he can get, he better pull this energy in, because Obama and Clyburn and the corporatists in the party put their thumbs on the scales and undermined the campaign of Bernie Sanders. But Bernie Sanders is still living. Not only is he still living, he's bigger than ever. He's the most trusted elected official in the United States of America. He's the preferred candidate on the right and the left. That's what the polls show. So let's be real clear. The last minute belongs to you, John Nichols.
I think that's a very savvy point that you just made there. And let me just make one last point here, which is that if Paul Vallas is elected mayor of Chicago, because of his more conservative stances, there's many ways in which he might be a challenge for national Democrats, for Biden and others. If Brandon Johnson is elected mayor of Chicago, the challenge he will pose is for Democrats to do more of what an awful lot of grassroots Democrats want to have done. So by that calculus, there's an awful lot of evidence that Brandon Johnson could be a much more beneficial mayor to President Biden.
Always making me think.
Or to the Democrats in Congress. Yeah.
It's okay to be mad about capitalism. That is John Nichols and Bernie Sanders' book, and it's a bestseller. You better go out and get it. It's okay to be angry about it. It's okay, but you want to be constructive, not destructive, everybody. You got to vote. You got to be involved. Remember, voting is the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end. On April 5th, you must then absolutely amp it up and advocate for your position. You must. If Brandon Johnson is elected, you must push him to do what you need him to do. If Paul Vallas is elected, you must do the same thing. Because the corporatists are already in the office. They're waiting for them to get there. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Oh, John Nichols, is there anything else you'd like to say? And I'm sorry I did not get to you, Aaron. But, Aaron, is there anything, we're still on Facebook Live. Got a lot of people here who are listening. Aaron, is there anything you'd like to say in response to what you've heard from John Nichols?
Well, I think John's analysis is, as usual, right on.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
And I'm excited to see Senator Sanders here. I think, when you look at the numbers, right? Let's go back to the political science part of it. Bernie Sanders is so popular in the city of Chicago, right? You mentioned his popularity nationally. That goes up in the areas where Brandon needs to perform. These are alliances that do actually drive turnout, and that stamp of approval, as John said, it's not the reason somebody votes for somebody, but it's like, if I have 10 reasons to vote for Brandon and then I see Bernie Sanders on stage with him all over the news, it's like, okay, if this is, I should just go do this, right? It's that extra stamp of approval, and it does make a difference. This one matters, right? It really does. So I'm excited for it. I think it'll be a great weekend for Brandon and his team and the amazing coalition he's built, you know, that has been at events and canvassing and knocking on thousands and thousands of doors in, you know, a couple hours. They're doing the grassroots work to back up the noise. So I'm excited.
John Nichols, you say he's surging at the right time.
Yeah, well, exactly. And Aaron is so wise. I want to pause and let that sink in with people a little bit. Let me just offer one additional notion there, and that is that, as Aaron says, building the coalition that wins in Chicago is complicated. It isn't. Chicago's a great big city with neighborhoods that are often, you know, rather disconnected from one another. They're all part of the city, but they have their own experiences, their own, you know, ethnicities, their own, you know, histories, and so weaving together a coalition of the possible requires the association of a candidacy with a lot of different folks and with a lot of different issues and a lot of different visions. And it doesn't mean you compromise in that regard. It means that you build out. That is the classic model of the rainbow from 1984 and 1988. And I think that with Sanders coming and with some of these members of Congress coming, that helps to build it out. What we know is that Bernie Sanders is very, very popular among young people. I mean, it's just a remarkable phenomenon of a political figure in his 80s who has great appeal to people in their 20s. And so we also know that that's a block that is not always the highest turnout, right? And so bringing Sanders in at this late stage, bringing some of these young members of Congress like Ayanna Pressley and others in at this late stage, that provides a boost for efforts to get young people to the polls. And if young people come, they're very likely to vote for Brandon Johnson. And one final thing I'll emphasize. We talk a lot about early voting, and early voting is a big deal. It's a big deal. But on Election Day, now I vote on Election Day. When I go to the polls on Election Day, the polls are crowded, right? There's an awful lot of people who do wait till the end to cast their ballot. And this is a big deal because that's what I was saying earlier about the surge notion. When you are surging at the end, when you are growing in your support at the end, that has immense power to build that momentum to get people to actually, on Election Day this year, on April 4th, whether they're in Wisconsin or in Illinois, to say, you know what, I've been hearing a lot about this election. I've got work to do. I've got family. I've got all sorts of other tensions and concerns and challenges in my life. But I'm going to carve this time out, whatever it takes, and I'm going to go to that polling place, and I'm going to vote. If people start to think that way, people that don't always vote start to think that way, then my sense is that Brandon Johnson wins the election.
Whew, we are going to see. I think it is. I think that he's got the momentum, and he's got the message. That having been said, I mean, and that's why Dick Durbin, you see, he came out and supported Paul Vallis. You know, because with these campaigns,
it's his right.
It's his right.
It's his right.
But I think it's very interesting that you have this, our senior senator who's like, wait a minute, and mind you, I don't push. I'm going to have Paul Vallis on Thursday. And oh, absolutely. I've had him on before. But, when I was speaking to his office, I said, I have my preference, but, I've not put my thumb on the scales. I've always tried to be honest and forthright and upright with you. I've sought to do that. And they said, and we believe that, and so does Mr. Vallis. You'll be honest, because I respect the fact, number one, that he's running. I respect the fact that in the audience that I have, some people are supporting him. And I think that I want people to make an educated decision, Aaron and John. I want you to hear these candidates, and go on and make your decision. I happen to believe that Brandon Johnson is going to be best for us, but I also know, given real politics, that if you don't get in and push Brandon Johnson to do what it is that you need him to do, we're going to have a mess, and you're going to be angry with him, and then more of us will not vote the next time.
Let me throw one quick thing in on what you just said, which is so important. I talk to a lot of candidates. I've talked to a lot of candidates for decades, many, many settings. And sometimes they will ask me questions. I usually ask them questions. But sometimes they'll ask, should I go on a show with somebody who isn't supporting me? Maybe a show where, the folks are actually kind of on the other side, or at least some of them are. And I always say, yes, of course. In a close election, it is very, very important to speak to not just your own supporters and rally them. If you can mobilize them, that's powerful. But also to speak to people who might not be with you, but some of whom might be wavering, right? Might be open. And at the very least, that may, kind of sort of balance out impressions of you, especially if you think you're going to win. That's very, very important. And so I'm not surprised that Paul Vallis, who I think is a smart man, is going to come on your show. And I'm also, I think that this is important as regards this race. I've seen Brandon Johnson going out to neighborhoods where he didn't do very well in the initial primary, right? Reaching out to some of the northwest side and the southwest side of the city, finding groups and coalition partners there. And I think that's how you do politics in a big, complex city. And so I'm very glad that you're hosting the candidates, right? And I know you'll be fair with them. I also know that one of them is going to win. And it's very, very important that when that person wins, that they come on your show the day after the election.
There's that.
Because all those appearances the day before are important, right? Or the week before. But it's afterwards, when someone has power, that you want to make sure that they are connected to people and hearing from people and communicating with them, that they don't kind of, get lost in that office, lost in that position of power. And so this is one of the reasons I love radio, and why I think for all of its strengths and weaknesses, radio remains the place where a political figure can, in a very easy way, without makeup and without all the rigmarole of television, you basically grab your phone and start talking.
Absolutely.
Where you can connect people up. So this is an important show that we're talking on, or now we're on Facebook, but this is an important show. And I love the fact that Santita, you've got a platform that candidates in these intense races feel it is important to appear on.
Well, I'm honored, and I will say this, just as we begin to close things out, that when I was able to get, when I was gifted with this platform, because that's really what it is, I reached out to you, John. Early on, didn't know where this was going, didn't know what I was walking into, and I said, I need your help. He said, just let me know how I can do it. And you have been unwavering in your support. And I tell you what, when my father has been in the hospital, and he's been a few times over the past year and a half, doctors and nurses come in and they listen to the show, which is like, my father's like, I can't believe this. I mean, he's like, I'm glad people are listening, and I think that they should. He said, but, several of these doctors have come in and they've started by saying, hi, Reverend Jackson, how you doing? I listen to your daughter every day. But they always point to you as someone who brings them to the show, because you have always made such good sense. And you have you're brilliant, you're fair, you're studied, and people get the sense that you really like them, love them, and are on their side. And I just want to thank you, as someone who's known you for more than 40 years. In fact, this is our 40th year, 1983, 2023. I just want to thank you for your friendship and for being my brother, beloved. Thank you so much for that.
Well, I feel the same way. And I feel honored to be a part of it. I don't know if Erin's still on with us.
Oh, and she's my sister, beloved. She's become my sister, and her son has become my godchild.
I've gotten to know Erin through this show. I've gotten to know her through this show, through listening to her wise comments and her always being there at those critical moments. And so there's a weird thing about a radio show. Even if people are in different cities and in different places, you form a sort of community, almost a family.
You do.
And that's why, that's why sometimes, as you well know, Santita, I've got other pulls on me, both political and religious.
Yes.
And it's sometimes you got to fit that schedule together. And I always try to find a way to make it work because for me, it's familial.
Well, I thank you for that. I mean, because our mutual friend Trevor Gervais married and became a father, and he said, I'm not going to be able to commit to the show as much as I've been able to because I really want to devote time to my family, which I completely supported and respected. He said, but I have someone for you.
Yeah,
you remember Trevor. And he said, but I have someone who I think you're gonna like her a lot. I think you're gonna love her. And boy, oh boy, it has been Erin. And Erin, I love you, and you are my sister beloved. And I thank God for you. I really do. I just.
Well, thank you. And thank you, John. I'm so honored to be on and part of this family, and I'm so grateful for the moments that you've given my son in these core memories that will define who he is and how he looks at the world and what he values and how he sees people show up in movements and how he sees what it takes to make a difference. And thank you and your mom and your dad and Miss Betty and Reverend Wilson and everyone who has given him 6 amazing years of those profound moments. So thank you both for that.
Well, she always brings her son out to everything, to vote, to canvass. Whew. Boy, oh boy, what a blessing. What a blessing. And I have to thank Alex Castaneda for, he is my new board operator, and he has trained beautifully by Jewel, but he has jumped in, and between 5:30 and 5:40, he always calls, Miss Jackson, how you doing? Can we go over the run sheet? Absolutely. Just a young man with such a blindingly bright future. Just a lovely, lovely, lovely young man. I just want to thank him for making this transition seamless, Alex. Seamless, seamless, seamless. Sending you much love too, and thank you. And I appreciate you so much for delivering such a wonderful, wonderful show. And I want to thank my morning stars who have been with me since the beginning. Ooh. And you all get up with me and you do the test so we can make sure that the sound is right. And no matter what, we've had some ups and downs and turnarounds on the show. You all have stayed there, and I just thank God for you. But you make me get up. And we have been with each other. We've become family through this pandemic, through this lockdown and all of this. And I just thank God for you every day. And it is my honor, my profound honor, to be in service to you. It is my profound honor. And I thank you. I thank God for all of you. And I'm just looking forward to seeing and being with you on Friday at our debate. And John, let me know if you're going to come in, as Aaron has urged you to do. Hello, on Thursday. Let me know if you're going to do that. I know that you've got a lot going on because you've got this big race in Wisconsin on Tuesday yourself.
Well, I also have some duties with your father, I think.
Oh gosh, don't we all?
I think on Saturday as well. So.
Oh, okay.
So I've got. I've got to balance a lot of things, but
yes,
I also, that I love politics. I love watching politics. I love seeing what people are doing, and so it's hard for me to stay away from Chicago because Chicago's where politics happens. And I remember as a kid, taking the train from Kenosha, Wisconsin, in 1983 to go down to Chicago. Because of the Harold Washington campaign. So Chicago's been kind of a magnet for me for a long time. So I won't, whatever days I get there, and I'm not still going to work that out, I can tell you that it's pretty much impossible for me to stay away from Chicago.
Well, you can't stay away from Chicago. Come on, you're Wisconsin. I just bring some of that cheese.
We'll bring cheese. You bring all the good stuff from Chicago, and somehow we'll actually erase that border.
Absolutely. You know, I love it. And I love you. And I love you, Aaron. I love you, Alex. I love all of my morning stars. Love you, love you, love you. Have a wonderful day. We have a wonderful day. Remember to get out and vote. Get out and vote. Same day, on-site voter registration that is available to you in Chicago. Let people know that they should and can get out and vote. Let them know, let them know, let them know. And call Rainbow Push if you have any problems. 773-FREEDOM, 773-FREEDOM. And please come over to Rainbow Push on Tuesday. We need some volunteers because, you know, we have coffee, donuts, and things like that. Because we are trying to help people get to the polls. We're trying to help people with problems that they have at the polls. We are there for you, as we have been for more than half a century. And sending you all much love. Have a magnificent day. That's right, Miss Robinson. Cuckoo, sending you much love. D-Ray, I wish I could get some rest. I got a lot of stuff to do, miles to go before I sleep. But I thank God for the energy and for the opportunity to do the work. Love you, everybody. Love you, John. Love you, Aaron. Love you, Alex. Love y'all. Love my morning stars. Love y'all. Love y'all. We are out of here. God bless you. Thank you so much.